All right, let's get right into it. Have you ever found yourself tearing up during a movie or maybe just hearing a sad story on the news? For a long, long time, our culture has kind of framed this as a sign of weakness. But what if that's completely backward? What if it's actually a sign of strength? Some scientists now call it having a highly responsive nervous system, which basically means you're built to process stress and emotion in real time instead of just, bottling it all up. Today, we're going to unpack the psychology of why some people cry easily and what it really says about them.
The idea that crying is actually good for you is not new at all. The Roman poet Ovid wrote this more than 2,000 years ago. He just perfectly captured that feeling we all kind of know is true, that there's this release, this satisfaction that comes from a good cry. So this isn't just some old folk wisdom, it's an idea that has stuck around for centuries for a reason.
And yet, despite knowing this for thousands of years, there's this other idea that just won't go away. We're always told to be strong, hold it together, don't cry. It creates this real conflict in our heads, right? Is this totally normal human thing a healthy release, or is it what so many of us were taught to believe, just a sign that you're not strong enough?
Well, to get to the bottom of that question, we have to look at what the science actually says. And what's cool is that researchers have pretty much moved past that whole weakness versus strength debate. Instead, they see crying as a really complex behavior with two very clear and very different jobs. So let's break them down.
This is so fascinating. Science basically splits the purpose of crying in half. First, there's what it does for you, on the inside. You can think of it like your body's own personal emotional reset button. It helps reduce stress, it regulates your mood, it soothes you. But then there's this whole other function, which is all about what it does for other people. Your tears aren't just for you. They are a super powerful nonverbal signal to everyone around you, basically saying, hey, I need help, and inviting connection.
Okay, so that first function, the self-soothing part, that seems pretty simple, right? You cry, you feel better. But when scientists actually try to prove it in a lab, they run into this really interesting puzzle. Turns out, the answer to the question, does crying make you feel better, totally depends on how and when you ask.
And this slide just lays out the contradiction perfectly. When researchers ask people to think back on the last time they cried, almost everyone says, yeah, I felt a lot better afterward. But, and this is a big but, when they bring people into a lab, show them a sad movie to get them to cry, and then ask them how they feel right then and there, the people who cried actually report feeling worse than the people who didn't. So what is going on here? How can both of these things be true?
Well, it turns out that the benefit you get from crying isn't automatic. It all comes down to context. Just think about it. Crying on the shoulder of a friend who gives you a hug feels totally different from crying at your desk at work, right? Did you get comfort, or did you feel embarrassed? Did crying actually help solve the problem? These are the things that separate a good cry that leaves you feeling relieved from a bad one that just leaves you feeling totally drained.
And that idea, how other people react, is so important. It brings us right to that second major function of crying, its incredible power as a social signal. Your tears aren't just an internal process. They are a message you broadcast to the entire world.
So, a really cool study from 2020 in Portugal decided to put this to the test. Researchers showed people pictures of faces. Some were normal, and on others, they digitally added tears. Then they just asked the participants, how do you feel about this person, and what would you do? And wow, the results show just how much tears can completely change how we see another person.
The first big finding was pretty stunning. Just look at this. When people saw a face with tears, their willingness to help shot up, compared to seeing the exact same face without tears. Now that might look like a small difference on a chart, but in the real world of human interaction, that is a huge leap. The simple act of crying flips a switch in other people's brains, turning on this powerful instinct to support and help.
So the takeaway here is really undeniable. From a social, maybe even an evolutionary perspective, tears are an incredibly effective tool. They're a universal signal that cuts through language to say, I'm vulnerable, I need support, and they trigger this helping response in the people who see them.
But like any really powerful tool, it's not quite that simple. This very strong social signal, well, it comes with a pretty significant trade-off. This same study that found tears make us want to help also found that they change our core judgments about the person who's crying. So what's the catch?
And here it is, this is the big trade-off. The study found that we see people who are crying as much warmer and friendlier. That's the upside, right? It draws us in. But at the exact same time, we also see them as less competent and less capable. And that's the social dilemma of crying. You might get the connection you need, but you might be paying for it with a hit to how competent people think you are.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the social side, what happens on the outside. So let's circle back to that idea of self-soothing. Let's say you're in a safe space, you have one of those good cries. What is actually physically happening inside your body to create that feeling of relief?
The process is actually pretty amazing. So, a stressful thing happens and your body kicks into fight or flight mode. But the physical act of crying, especially that deep, rhythmic breathing that happens when you're really sobbing, that can actually activate the opposite system in your body. It's called the parasympathetic nervous system, or PNS. The easiest way to think about it is that the PNS is your body's brake pedal. It's the rest and digest system. When it gets switched on, your heart rate slows down and it creates a real feeling of calm.
So really, the whole point of this entire physiological reaction is to get your body back to a state of balance, a state that scientists call homeostasis. Crying, then, isn't a sign that you're losing control. In the right setting, it can be your body's way of regaining control and bringing everything back to normal after a big stress.
So when you put all these pieces together, the social signals, the internal biology, the psychological context, you start to see a much, much clearer picture. It's really time for us to reframe our whole relationship with tears and understand their true power.
So, let's just quickly recap what we figured out. First, crying is not a weakness. It's a really sophisticated tool. Internally, it's a way for your body to calm itself down and get back to balance. Externally, it's a powerful social signal designed to get you support. And maybe most importantly, whether you actually get that feeling of relief depends almost entirely on your situation, on whether or not you feel safe.
So the next time you feel those tears welling up, try not to ask, ugh, am I being weak? Instead, try asking yourself this. What is my highly responsive nervous system trying to tell me right now? Is it trying to regulate some overwhelming stress? Or is it sending out a signal that what you really need is connection? Learning to listen to that signal and understanding what it's for, that is where the real strength is.